Ladies and gentlemen, I'm out here in beautiful San Diego. I did med school out here, and for obvious reasons, it makes me reflective. In fact, someone recently asked me, what was med school like? How did you feel? What was your emotional state? Were you happier than you are now? Or are you happier now than you were then? And it got me thinking how, it's totally human nature to take things for granted, right? And as I was reflecting on medical school, and yeah, wow, this hill right here is actually a killer on the bike, by the way. It is one hell of a climb. But you're rewarded by cycling right along the water. So when I was thinking back to med school, I feel like I didn't have as many things to worry about, which was kind of liberating, kind of nice in a way. And now, as a fully grown adult, I got responsibilities, I got a mortgage, I got my parents that are aging, I got, just things that occupy my mind. Whereas there's a certain level of simplicity when you're younger, or maybe when you're just more, your bandwidth is more occupied by a single thing. So I started med school at 21, and I finished 5 years later, did a research year. So 21 to 26. So part of it could be age, but I think part of it is also just when you're super consumed by something like medical school, you don't even have the ability to think through like life meaning and life purpose and investing and like all these other things, because studying medicine, trying to become the best physician you can be, is just front and center. That's the only thing that you really have the ability to think about and spend your time on. So what I'm trying to say is, it is very much human nature for us to take these things for granted, because there's a certain level of simplicity and ease that I miss. There's also a certain level of grind to reward that's very simple. When you are out in the adult world, you're not a student anymore, there isn't always a guarantee between how much effort you put in and how much reward you get out. But generally in medical school, and it's not perfect, but I think it's better than the messy adult world, the harder you study, the better you do in school. And the more you intentionally design and implement your study strategies and use active learning techniques and all the things that I talk about on the Med School Insiders channel and my personal Kevin and Jubbal MD channel, the better you do. So when I was reflecting back on medical school, the two things that I kind of miss in a way is that, or at least feel some nostalgia for, is that level of simplicity of just focusing on medicine and not worrying as much about, oh my god, like I'm having knee problems and what do I do about that, and just the random things that come up in life. And my mom's getting older, and worrying about her health. I actually made a whole video on my personal channel about trying to help her with her prediabetes. And family is just younger and healthier, and you're younger and healthier, and that's one part. The second part is, it's so rewarding, and it actually helps you build confidence when you do hard things like study in medical school, and you find that this thing that seems insurmountable, incredibly challenging, so crazy, is actually something you can handle, something you can actually succeed at if you put in the time and effort. And it builds that sense of self-efficacy, which I think is very important. The whole idea of fake it till you make it, I've always hated that advice, because I think it just leads to imposter syndrome, where you aren't sure whether or not you belong, whether you deserve to be there. But by doing hard things and overcoming them, you end up earning, not just building, but earning that true self-confidence. But here's the funny thing. I'm 32 now. I'm looking back 10 years ago when I was in this area by UC San Diego, and I can very easily romanticize things and make it seem like it was this amazing time in my life. But the truth is that at any time in your life, there are good things and there are bad things. So the somewhat ironic thing is that I am definitely doing the same thing right now, right? And the key, the trick, the game is to try to fight that urge, fight that tendency to be taking things for granted. So right now, my health is pretty great. I'm feeling really good. I'm doing cardio 4 or 5 times a week. I'm lifting weights 4 times a week. My IBD is super well managed. I'm in a very good place in my life. My business is doing well. I'm hitting a lot of these goals and milestones that I want to be hitting, sometimes earlier than expected, which makes me feel great. And yet, I'm now focusing on the lack of simplicity, and I'm like, oh, I kind of miss the simplicity that I have in med school. But 5 or 10 years from now, I'm gonna look at today and be like, man, I wish I didn't take X, Y, or Z for granted so much. And I don't know if there's a simple fix to it, or at least an easy fix to it. I think it's a constant practice of gratitude. One thing that I've been doing on and off, I haven't been as consistent recently, is keeping a gratitude journal. So every morning, 3 things I'm grateful for. And if you find yourself having a certain pattern where you always are grateful for people in your life or your health, or like, certain patterns, then you can add some constraints for yourself to make sure that you're using, like, you never repeat the same thing twice, or to actually keep it fresh so it doesn't become stale in and of itself. It wasn't until my late 20s, I had quit plastic surgery, I had moved to Las Vegas, I was no longer having to be anywhere. I could just wake up and do whatever I wanted, which, sounds better than it is, because in reality I was working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, building my businesses, etc. But it was only at that time, a friend actually told me, he's like, Kevin, there is no then. It's not like you work hard now and then X, Y, or Z happen and then you're happy, right? It is now. Like, life is happening now. There is no difference between then and now. You have to choose to be happy in the moment. Again, easier said than done. Not something that I have mastered by any means. Something that is a constant work in progress for myself and for many people. So the key then becomes, how do you find pleasure and joy in the journey? Because the destination is fleeting. The destination is just a brief moment in time. Whereas the journey is where you're spending most of your time. And there is a way to enjoy the journey. There are moments in medical school that I reflect on, and I'm like, those are some of the best moments of my life. I was working hard. I had that sense of community. I've learned that the hard way too. Especially during COVID, how important community is. Because during COVID, I very much isolated myself, got into a not so good mental space. And let's go to carpool. And it was only after COVID and then rebuilding that community in Las Vegas that I realized how important that was. And when I think back to medical school, I'm like, oh wow, look, the same thing was happening there, whereby even though the situation, the circumstances were very challenging, we're all working incredibly hard, it's not a vacation by any means. I know for myself and for many of my friends, it was such a fun and rewarding experience because, sure, you're learning about things that interest you rather than in college. There's some classes you don't really care about, but you have to do, etc., etc. But I think a big part of it is that you have this shared purpose. You're working with other people. You're all grinding it out together, and you actually bond much stronger through struggle than through easy times. And those bonds, some of the closest friends to this day are from medical school. There we go, UC San Diego. That's the spot. Big thanks to Mazda for loaning me this 2023 Mazda CX-50 Turbo Premium Plus, which is the same vehicle that I actually own, except this one is in a different exterior and interior color. Check out the videos about the car linked below. Now I know most of my viewers are not in medical school. They have no interest in medicine, but thanks for watching regardless, and I hope you found some value in this video. Much love, my friends. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.